The warning signals screamed across every human communication network in the galaxy. Red lights flashed in military bases from Earth to the Outer Rim colonies. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Sol Defense Headquarters, watching, as the largest alien fleet ever seen dropped out of hyperspace just beyond Pluto's orbit. The holographic display showed 12 different types of warships. Each one belonged to a different alien species. Together they formed the Galactic Council's war fleet. Chen had seen pictures of these ships before in intelligence reports, but seeing them in person made her stomach drop. The smallest vessel was twice the size of Earth's largest battleship. "Admiral, incoming transmission," called Lieutenant Park from the communication station. "They're requesting to speak with Earth's highest military authority." Chen straightened her uniform and walked to the center of the room. "Put it through. Full display." The air in front of her shimmered, and 12 alien forms appeared. Each one looked completely different from the others. The crystalline hierarchs looked like walking diamonds with too many sharp edges. The void touched were black shadows that seemed to absorb light around them. The thermal kings glowed like small suns. Other species stood behind them, all staring at Chen with various types of eyes. The largest crystalline hierarch stepped forward. Its voice sounded like breaking glass when it spoke. "We are the Galactic Council. We speak for the civilized galaxy." "You are Admiral Chen of the human military forces." "That's correct," Chen replied, keeping her voice steady. "What brings the Council to our solar system?" "Judgment," said one of the void touched. Its voice was like cold wind. "Your species has been found guilty of disrupting galactic peace." Chen frowned. "How exactly have we disrupted galactic peace? We've been nothing but friendly to every species we've met." A creature that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles. "Friendly, yes, but also unpredictable. Chaotic. Your species spreads across space too quickly. You make friends with species we have marked as dangerous. You ignore our warnings about forbidden territories. You built colonies in 17 star systems without asking permission," added a blob-like alien that spoke through bubbles. "You trade with the rogue merchants. You explore areas marked as off-limits." The thermal king's voice boomed like thunder. "Worst of all, you refuse to follow the established order. Every other species learned their place in the galaxy. You humans act like you belong everywhere." Chen felt anger building in her chest, but she kept her expression calm. "So, what exactly are you proposing?" The crystalline hierarch's edges seemed to get sharper. "The Council has decided to offer humanity one final chance. You have 72 standard galactic cycles to withdraw from all colonies beyond your home system. All human ships must return to Earth immediately. Your species will accept protective custody under Council supervision." "And if we refuse?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then you will be removed from the galaxy permanently," the void touched said simply. "Your colonies will be destroyed. Your ships will be turned to dust. Earth itself will be sterilized to prevent future contamination." The insect alien clicked again. "Do not think your primitive weapons can stand against us. Our fleet contains vessels that have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have weapons that can crack planets like eggs. Your entire military could not damage even one of our escort ships." Chen looked at each alien face in turn. Some showed what might have been pity. Others showed nothing at all. A few seemed almost eager for her to refuse their offer. 72 cycles, she said slowly. "That's about 3 Earth months." "Correct," the crystalline hierarch confirmed. "Use this time wisely. Prepare your people for their new life under Council protection. We will return for your answer." The transmission cut off. The aliens vanished, leaving Chen alone with her staff in the sudden quiet of the command center. Outside the windows, she could see the lights of the alien fleet hanging in space like deadly stars. "Admiral," said Colonel Rodriguez, her second in command, "what are our options?" Chen walked to the main tactical display. It showed Earth's defensive fleet. 47 ships total. Most of them were barely larger than the alien escort vessels. The Council's fleet had over 300 ships, and each one was a technological marvel that outclassed anything humans had ever built. "Realistically," Chen said, "we have no options. If we fight them with conventional forces, they'll wipe us out in minutes. If we surrender, humanity becomes a pet species in a cosmic zoo. So what do we do? Asked Captain Williams from the Intelligence Division. Chen was quiet for a long moment. She thought about every human colony that would have to be abandoned. She thought about the millions of people who would lose their homes. She thought about her own children, who would grow up as prisoners in their own solar system. Then she thought about something else, something that had been classified so deeply that even she had only learned about it 6 months ago. A project that had been running in secret for 30 years. A project that the military's best scientists called either humanity's greatest achievement or its most expensive joke. Colonel Rodriguez, she said finally, I need you to send a message to Mars. Tell Dr. Webb that Project Absurdity is now active. Full authorization. Rodriguez looked confused. Project Absurdity? Admiral, I've never heard of that designation. That's because it doesn't officially exist, Chen replied. And if it works the way Webb claims it will, it's going to stay that way for a while longer. She turned to address the entire command center. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 3 months to prepare for war. Not the kind of war the Council expects. Not the kind of war anyone expects. We're going to show these aliens why you should never corner a human with nothing left to lose. What's our strategy, Admiral? Asked Lieutenant Park. Chen smiled for the first time since the transmission ended. It was not a pleasant smile. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to break all the rules and see what happens. Over. The next few hours, Chen sent coded messages to secret facilities across the solar system. Projects that had been theoretical became urgent priorities. Scientists who had been called crazy were suddenly the most important people in human space. The Galactic Council thought they knew what they were dealing with. They had studied human technology and found it primitive. They had analyzed human military tactics and found them simple. They had observed human behavior and found it chaotic. What they didn't understand was that chaos could be a weapon. What they couldn't predict was that humans had been preparing for this moment since the first time they looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. In the depths of space, the Council fleet waited patiently for humanity's surrender. Their commanders were confident that the humans would see reason. After all, every other species had accepted Council authority when faced with such overwhelming force, but humans were not like every other species. And Admiral Chen was about to prove that in the most spectacular way possible. The countdown to war had begun. The transport ship descended through the thin Martian atmosphere toward the polar ice cap. Admiral Chen pressed her face to the window, watching the red landscape pass below. She had been to Mars dozens of times, but never to this particular set of coordinates. According to her clearance documents, this location didn't officially exist. The ship landed on what looked like empty ice. Chen stepped out, followed by her aide, Colonel Rodriguez. The cold hit them immediately, even through their environmental suits. Are you sure this is the right place? Rodriguez asked, looking around at the barren landscape. Before Chen could answer, the ice began to move. A section 50 meters wide slid aside, revealing a hidden entrance that went deep underground. Warm air rushed up from below, melting the frost on their helmet visors. Dr. Marcus Webb emerged from the entrance, grinning like a man who had just won the lottery. He was tall and thin, with wild gray hair that stuck out in all directions. His lab coat was covered in stains that Chen decided not to ask about. Admiral Chen, perfect timing. We just finished the final calibrations. Webb's eyes were bright with excitement. Come on, come on. You have to see what we've built. They followed, him down a corridor that seemed to go on forever. The walls were lined with materials Chen didn't recognize. Some sections glowed softly. Others seemed to bend light around them in impossible ways. Dr. Webb, Chen said as they walked, I need to understand exactly what Project Absurdity is. My briefing files were mostly empty. Webb laughed. That's because most of what we've done here technically violates several laws of physics. We decided it was safer to keep the details classified until we knew it wouldn't accidentally destroy reality. Accidentally destroy reality? Rodriguez repeated slowly. Oh, don't worry about that, Webb said cheerfully. We're pretty sure that won't happen anymore. We've only had 3 reality tears in the past 6 months, and they were all very small. Chen and Rodriguez exchanged glances. Chen was beginning to understand why this project had been kept so secret. They entered a massive chamber carved out of the rock beneath the ice. The space was enormous, easily large enough to hold a city. But instead of buildings, it contained something that made Chen's brain hurt to look at. The object in front of her was definitely a spaceship. But it was also clearly impossible. It seemed to be the size of a small moon and the size of a fighter craft at the same time. The hull appeared to be made of metal that was both solid and transparent. Lights moved across its surface in patterns that hurt to follow with her eyes. "What am I looking at?" Chen asked quietly. "The HDSF absolutely not," Webb said proudly. "Humanity's first truly impossible warship. It's..." Rodriguez started, then stopped. "It's giving me a headache just to look at it." "That's normal," Webb assured him. "The ship exists in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. Your brain is trying to process information it wasn't designed to handle. The headache goes away after a few minutes." Chen walked closer to the ship. As she moved, it seemed to change. Sometimes it looked massive. Sometimes it looked tiny. Sometimes it seemed to be made of metal. Other times it looked like it was built from crystallized starlight. "How is this possible?" she asked. Webb's grin got even wider. "It isn't. That's the beauty of it. We built something that can't exist so it doesn't have to follow normal rules." "Explain that in terms I can understand," Chen said. "Right, sorry. Sometimes I forget not everyone has spent 30 years thinking about impossible physics." Webb pulled out a tablet and started drawing diagrams. "See? Every other species in the galaxy builds ships using what they call sensible engineering. They follow the laws of physics. They use materials that exist. They design weapons that work according to established principles. And we didn't? Oh, we threw all that out the window in year 1, Webb said happily. Instead, we asked a simple question. What if we built a ship that was powered by pure human stubbornness? Chen stared at him. You're joking. Not even a little bit. The ship's main power source is what we call the defiance drive. It converts human refusal to accept limitations into usable energy. The more impossible something should be, the more power we get from making it work anyway. Rodriguez was still staring at the ship. What about weapons? Oh, we have the best weapons, Webb said excitedly. Probability cannons that fire bullets. That always hit their targets. Not just good aim. They retroactively change reality so that missing was never a possibility. We have politeness missiles that apologize to their targets before destroying them across multiple timelines. And my personal favorite, the irony cannon. What does that do? Chen asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. It makes things hilariously appropriate. Enemy fires a planet-killer weapon at us. The irony cannon makes sure it hits their own flagship instead. Very satisfying to watch. They walked up a ramp that definitely hadn't been there a moment ago. The ship's interior was just as impossible as its exterior. Corridors led in directions that didn't exist. The bridge seemed to be larger than the entire ship from the outside. A voice spoke from everywhere at once. Good afternoon, Admiral Chen. Welcome aboard. I am Murphy, the ship's artificial intelligence. Hello, Murphy, Chen said, looking around for the source of the voice. Are you named after Murphy's Law? Indeed. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. We decided to weaponize that principle. Now anything that can go wrong will go wrong for our enemies instead of us. Chen was starting to feel dizzy. This is all completely insane. Thank you, Murphy replied. We worked very hard to achieve proper insanity. Sanity is much too limiting for this kind of work. Webb led them to the bridge where a man in a military uniform was arguing with a computer console. He was about Chen's age, with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes. When he saw them approach, he grinned and saluted. Admiral Chen, Captain, Jake Morrison at your service, though most people call me Overkill. Why do they call you that? Rodriguez asked. Morrison's grin got wider. Because I believe that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing with ridiculously excessive force. When they told me they needed someone to captain an impossible ship, I volunteered immediately. Chen looked around the bridge. The control panels were covered with buttons labeled things like aggressive negotiation and constructive criticism. One entire section was marked, "Please don't touch unless reality needs fixing." "Captain Morrison," she said, "can this ship actually fight?" "Admiral, this ship doesn't just fight. It redefines what fighting means. We don't destroy enemies. We make them question their life choices. We don't win battles. We convince the universe that we were supposed to win all along." Webb nodded enthusiastically. The ship's defensive systems include nope shields that simply refuse to acknowledge incoming damage. Our tactical computers run on organized chaos algorithms, and if things get really serious, we can deploy the reality anchor. "What's a reality anchor?" Chen asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. "It forces local space-time to follow, rules that make sense to humans," Murphy explained. "Very useful when fighting enemies who rely on impossible technology." Chen sat down in the captain's chair, which immediately adjusted itself to fit her perfectly. Around her, the impossible ship hummed with impossible energy. She thought about the Galactic Council's ultimatum. She thought about their threats. She thought about their massive fleet filled with weapons that could crack planets. Then she started to smile. "Gentlemen," she said, "I think it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity." Morrison cracked his knuckles. "Finally. I was getting bored just existing in 17 dimensions. Time to add some excitement to the universe." The ship began to move, sliding through dimensions like a knife through butter. Outside, reality bent to accommodate something that had no right to exist. The war was about to begin. The Galactic Council's war fleet hung in space beyond Pluto, like a collection of deadly jewels. 300 ships from 12 different species, all waiting for humanity's inevitable surrender. Their commanders were confident. No species had ever resisted the Council's authority for long. Admiral Kethvar of the Crystalline Hierarchs stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Starbreaker. His diamond-like form reflected the lights of the command displays as he reviewed tactical reports. Every scan of human space showed the same thing, a handful of primitive vessels that posed no threat to even his smallest escort ships. "Admiral," called his tactical officer, "I'm detecting a hyperspace disturbance." Kethvar turned toward the main display. "Show me." The view screen lit up with sensor data. Something was coming out of hyperspace right in the middle of their formation, but the readings made no sense. The computer systems kept changing their minds about what they were detecting. "Sir, the sensors are malfunctioning," the tactical officer reported. "They're showing a ship that's simultaneously the size of a moon and the size of a fighter craft. The mass readings keep switching between impossible and undefined. Run a diagnostic on all sensor arrays," Kethvar ordered. Before the diagnostic could complete, space twisted. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and suddenly there was a ship floating exactly where no ship should be able to exist. The alien fleet's sensors immediately began displaying error messages in languages that hadn't been invented yet. The human vessel defied description. It looked like it was made of solid metal and pure energy at the same time. Its hull seemed to shift between dimensions, making it impossible to focus on properly. Warning lights flashed across every council ship as their targeting systems gave up, trying to lock onto something that technically wasn't entirely there. "What in the name of the void is that thing?" whispered Commander Zextal of the Thermal Kings from his own flagship. Before anyone could answer, the human ship opened communications. The transmission appeared on every council vessel simultaneously, which should have been impossible since they weren't all on the same frequency. A human face appeared on their screens. He looked relaxed, almost bored. He was chewing on something that looked like a small stick. When he spoke, his voice was casual, like he was talking to old friends. "Good afternoon, folks. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the HDSF Absolutely Not. Hope you don't mind us dropping by unannounced." Admiral Kethvar stepped forward, his crystal form crackling with energy. "Human vessel, you are trespassing in a council military formation. Identify your ship class and purpose immediately." Morrison grinned and took the stick out of his mouth. "Ship class? Well, that's a fun question. Technically, we're classified as a Tuesday, but we like to call her a Class F problem solver. As for our purpose, we heard you boys were looking for a fight. The council commanders exchanged confused glances through their communication channels. A Tuesday? Commander Zextal muttered. What kind of classification is that? Morrison seemed to hear him somehow. Oh, it's a long story. See, when our engineers were designing this ship, they kept running into problems that shouldn't exist. So they decided to classify it based on the day of the week they finished it. Turned out to be a Tuesday, so that's what went in the official paperwork. This is absurd, snarled General Hive Mind 7 of the collective swarm. No ship can function on such ridiculous principles. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Morrison agreed cheerfully. But here we are, existing anyway. Funny how that works. Kethvar was getting frustrated. His sensors still couldn't get a proper reading on the human vessel. Every scan produced different results. One moment it registered as a small fighter. The next moment, it appeared to be larger than his own flagship. Sometimes, it seemed to be made of normal matter. Other times it showed up as organized thought patterns. Human captain, he said formally, you will submit to boarding and inspection. This formation is under council authority. Morrison laughed. That's cute. Murphy, show them what we think about authority. A new voice joined the conversation. It sounded like it was coming from the human ship itself. Certainly, Captain. Activating diplomatic protocols. The space around the council fleet suddenly became very strange. Several escort ships found themselves flying backwards while their engines pushed forward. Others discovered that their weapons were pointing at themselves. One unfortunate void. Touch destroyer started existing only on weekends. What's happening to our ships, Gao? Demanded Kethvar. Oh, that's just Murphy being friendly, Morrison explained. Our AI gets a bit creative when we meet new people. Don't worry, the effects are mostly harmless, mostly. Commander Zextal's voice crackled over the communication channel. Our thermal cannons are firing snowballs. How are our thermal cannons firing snowballs? Murphy's got a sense of humor, Morrison said. Fair warning, it gets worse if you actually annoy us. A smaller council ship, commanded by an eager young officer from the Rigid Order clan, decided to take action. Without waiting for orders, it fired a warning shot at the human vessel. The energy beam lanced through space toward the absolutely not. Morrison sighed. Well, that wasn't very polite. Murphy, would you mind handling that? Of course, Captain. Initiating temporal loop correction. The energy beam struck the human ship and bounced off harmlessly, but instead of dispersing, it curved back toward the ship that had fired it. Not only that, but it somehow arrived before it had been fired in the first place. The attacking vessel found itself being hit by its own weapon shot, while its captain was still giving the order to fire. The ship didn't explode. Instead, it found itself caught in a time loop, continuously firing at itself, and then being hit by its own shot from 5 seconds in the future. The captain's confused voice echoed over the communication channels as he tried to figure out why he was giving the same order over and over again. How is that possible? Kethvar demanded. Morrison shrugged. Beats me. I just drive the thing. Murphy handles all the impossible stuff. Speaking of which, Murphy, want to show them your favorite trick? The one with the dimensions, Captain? That's the one. Suddenly, the human ship began to exist in several places at once, not copies. The same ship, somehow occupying multiple positions in space simultaneously. From the Council fleet's perspective, they were now surrounded by the same vessel approaching from 17 different directions. This is impossible, whispered the collective swarm's commander. Matter cannot exist in multiple locations simultaneously. You're absolutely right, Morrison agreed. It is impossible. We do it anyway. Turns out the universe is pretty flexible if you're polite about bending the rules. Admiral Kethvar had commanded fleets for over 1,000 years. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had faced enemies with technology beyond imagination. But he had never encountered anything like this. His tactical computers had given up trying to analyze the human ship and were now displaying philosophical questions instead of targeting data. What do you want? He asked finally. Morrison's expression became serious for the first time. We want you to go home. We want you to leave human space alone. And we want you to tell the Council that humanity isn't interested in being anyone's pets. And if we refuse? Morrison's grin returned, but it wasn't friendly anymore. Then we'll have to get creative. Trust me, you don't want to see what happens when humans get creative in a war. The communication channel filled with angry voices from various council commanders, all demanding action. But Kethvar found himself staring at sensor readings that made no sense, watching a ship that shouldn't exist, listening to threats delivered with casual confidence by a species that should have been helpless. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kethvar wondered if the Council might have made a mistake. The human ship continued to exist in impossible ways, waiting patiently for the aliens' next move. Around them, space itself seemed to be holding its breath. Admiral Kethvar made his decision with the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds behind him. No single ship, no matter how strange, could stand against the entire Council war fleet. He opened communications to all vessels. Council fleet, this is Admiral Kethvar. The humans have refused to surrender. All ships prepare for coordinated assault. Target the anomalous vessel and fire on my command. 300 warships powered up their weapons simultaneously. The space around Pluto lit up with the glow of charging energy cannons, plasma torpedoes, and matter disintegrators. Each weapon system was capable of destroying a city. Together, they could crack a planet. Captain Morrison watched the display of firepower with interest. Well, Murphy, looks like they want to do this the hard way. So it appears, Captain, the AI replied. Shall I activate our defensive systems? All of them. Let's show these folks why you never pick a fight with someone who has nothing left to lose. Defensive systems online, Captain. Reality anchor engaged. Nope shields at maximum politeness. Kethvar raised his crystalline arm. All ships, fire. The Council fleet unleashed hell. Hundreds of energy beams, plasma bolts, and exotic matter projectiles streaked toward the human ship. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The combined assault lit up space like a newborn star. Every shot hit the absolutely not dead center, and absolutely nothing happened. The energy beams struck the ship's hull and simply stopped existing. The plasma torpedoes hit the nope shields and politely apologized before going away. The matter disintegrators reached the reality anchor and forgot what matter was supposed to mean in the first place. Morrison yawned. Is that it? Murphy, I think they're trying to tickle us. Indeed, Captain. Their weapons appear to be suffering from an acute case of irrelevance. Well, that's just rude. I think it's time we returned the favor. Murphy, load the probability cannons. Probability cannons loaded and ready, Captain. What level of impossibility would you prefer? Let's start with mildly ridiculous and work our way up from there. The human ship's weapon systems activated with a sound like reality clearing its throat. The probability cannons fired rounds that didn't just hit their targets. They retroactively ensured that missing had never been a possibility in any timeline. 12 Council ships found themselves being hit by bullets that had been fired from guns that wouldn't be invented for another century. The projectiles didn't destroy the ships. Instead, they made the crews suddenly realize that they were fighting on the wrong side of history. Sir, reported the tactical officer on Kethvar's flagship, the rigid order destroyer Herald of Conformity is requesting permission to switch sides. What? Kethvar snarled. Why? They say they've been hit by a philosophical argument and now they understand that resistance to tyranny is the most sacred duty of all sentient beings. Before Kethvar could respond, Morrison's voice came over the communication channels. Again. Hope you don't mind, but we thought we'd try some diplomatic solutions first. Murphy, fire the please don't missiles. Certainly, Captain. Target selected. Firing politeness ordnance. A missile launched from the human ship toward the Council's largest dreadnought. But this wasn't an ordinary missile. As it flew through space, it broadcast a continuous message. Excuse me. Terribly sorry to bother you, but would you mind very much not trying to conquer innocent people? It's really quite rude, and I'm sure your parents would be disappointed. The missile struck the dreadnought's shields and exploded into pure politeness. The energy wave washed over the ship, and suddenly every crew member found themselves remembering their manners. The captain immediately got on the communication system to apologize to the humans for the misunderstanding. "This is insane," muttered Commander Zextal from his thermal command ship. "How do you fight an enemy that weaponizes good manners?" "You don't," Morrison replied cheerfully, somehow hearing the private communication. "That's kind of the point. Murphy, I think it's time for some constructive criticism." "Excellent choice, Captain, deploying the educational torpedoes. 20 missiles streaked toward different council ships. When they struck, they didn't explode. Instead, they created holographic displays that showed each crew exactly what they were doing wrong and helpful suggestions for improvement." The Void. Touch Destroyer Eclipse of Hope received a detailed presentation on why galactic domination is bad for mental health. The collective swarm battleship Unity of Purpose got a workshop on learning to respect individual rights. The Thermal King's cruiser Solar Fury was treated to a seminar called Anger Management for Beings Made of Living Fire. "Sir," reported Kethavar's communications officer, "half our fleet is requesting time off to think about their career choices." "Enough," Kethavar roared. "All ships, fire everything. Use the planet killer weapons. Turn that impossible ship into atoms." The Council fleet's most powerful weapons charged up. These were the guns that had ended civilizations. Planet crackers that could split worlds in half, stellar disruptors that could make stars go nova, void cannons that erased matter from existence. Morrison watched the energy readings climb and whistled appreciatively. "Now that's more like it. Murphy, they're bringing out the big guns." "I see that, Captain. Shall I deploy our ultimate defensive measure? You mean the one that makes physics professors cry?" "That's the one, Captain." "Do it." The space around the human ship suddenly became very strange. The laws of physics took a coffee break and reality went on vacation. When the Council's superweapons fired, their planet killer beams struck the ship and immediately became confused about what they were supposed to kill. One beam decided it was supposed to destroy the concept of hostility and made everyone in the area feel friendly toward each other. Another beam forgot it was a weapon and became a light show that spelled out "Have a nice day" in 17 different languages. A third beam struck the ship and bounced back toward its origin, but somehow traveled through time and arrived before it was fired, creating a causal loop that made the firing ship's computer crash. "This is impossible," Kethavar said for the 100th time. "You keep saying that," Morrison replied. "But here we are, being impossible anyway. Murphy, I think it's time for the big finish." "The irony cannon, Captain?" "The irony cannon." A new weapon emerged from the human ship. It didn't look like much, just a simple barrel that seemed to be made of crystallized laughter. But when it fired, reality itself started to giggle. The irony cannon's beam struck the Council fleet's flagship, the pride of the galaxy. This massive vessel was designed to be unstoppable, invincible, and absolutely perfect in every way. It was the Council's greatest achievement, crewed by their best officers, equipped with their most advanced technology. The irony cannon made sure that all of that became hilariously, perfectly, appropriately wrong. The pride of the galaxy's engines, designed to be incredibly powerful, became incredibly powerful at going backwards. Its weapons, designed to destroy enemies, became incredibly effective at destroying the ship's own non-essential systems. Its communications array, designed to coordinate the fleet, began broadcasting the captain's personal diary to every ship in the area. Most embarrassingly, the ship's advanced AI, programmed to be supremely logical and efficient, suddenly developed a sense of humor and began making jokes about its own crew's tactical decisions. "Sir," the AI announced cheerfully, "I've analyzed our battle plan and determined that our strategy is hilariously inadequate. Shall I update our tactical databases with the entry, 'Humans are apparently space wizards'?" Kethavar watched his pride and joy become a cosmic joke. Around him, the rest of the Council fleet was falling apart in equally ridiculous ways. Ships were apologizing to each other for minor navigation errors from decades ago. Weapon systems were firing confetti instead of death rays. One entire squadron had somehow become convinced that they were actually explorers, who had just discovered a beautiful new form of interpretive dance. "Captain Morrison," Kethvar said finally, his voice filled with defeat. "What do you want?" Morrison's image appeared on the main screen, still casual, still chewing on that small stick. "Same thing I wanted an hour ago, Admiral. We want you to go home. We want you to leave human space alone, and we want you to tell the Council that we're not interested in being anyone's pets. And if we refuse to leave?" Morrison's grin turned predatory. "Then Murphy and I will have to get creative. And trust me, you really don't want to see what happens when we get creative." Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at displays that showed impossible readings. His weapons were loading themselves with birthday cake instead of ammunition. His flagship's AI was composing poetry about the futility of galactic conquest. "All ships," he said quietly, "begin withdrawal from human space. Set course for Council headquarters." "Excellent choice," Morrison said approvingly. "Murphy, stop breaking their reality. Let them leave with some dignity." "Of course, Captain," restoring normal physics in 3, 2, 1. Reality snapped back to normal, leaving the Council fleet floating in space, confused but intact. One by one, the alien ships turned and fled toward deep space, their commanders already composing reports that no one would believe. The human ship watched them go, existing in 17 dimensions and powered by pure stubbornness. A testament to what happened when you told humanity that something couldn't be done. The battle was over. Humanity had won. And across the galaxy, other alien empires who had been planning their own invasions of human space quietly deleted those plans from their computers. 3 days after the battle that technically never happened but somehow ended with the Galactic Council's decisive defeat, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Sol Defense Station. Through the massive windows, she could see the HDSF absolutely not docked at the main berth, still flickering between dimensions and occasionally existing as a small potted plant for reasons that Dr. Webb assured her were perfectly logical. The aftermath reports were spread across her desk, though calling them reports was generous. Most of them read more like fever dreams written by poets who had eaten too much cheese before bed. "Admiral," said Colonel Rodriguez, entering with another stack of documents, "we've received formal communications from 47 different alien species. They all want to know the same thing." "Let me guess," Chen said without looking up. "They want to know how we did it." "Actually, no. They want to know if we're accepting applications for friendship treaties." Chen finally looked up. "What?" Rodriguez grinned. "Apparently word has spread about our little demonstration. Half the galaxy is talking about the humans who built a warship powered by stubbornness and won a battle using weaponized politeness. The other half thinks we're either gods or completely insane." "What's the difference?" asked Dr. Webb, who had just arrived carrying a coffee cup that seemed to be drinking itself. "From a certain point of view, advanced enough technology is indistinguishable from divine madness." Chen shook her head. "Dr. Webb, that's not how the saying goes, isn't it? I thought Arthur C. Clarke was being too conservative in his estimates." Webb sat down and his self-drinking coffee cup began brewing more coffee. "Besides, we've had 17 marriage proposals from alien species who find our approach to physics romantically impossible." "Marriage proposals?" "Oh yes. The crystalline hierarchs are particularly interested. They say they've spent eons looking for someone who could make their ordered existence more chaotic. Apparently, we're exactly what they've been searching for." Rodriguez pulled up a holographic display showing the current galactic political situation. The map was covered in colored zones representing different alien territories. But now, scattered throughout the display, small human flags were appearing in systems that had never seen human ships. "Admiral, we're getting requests for human mediation in 3 separate territorial disputes. The aliens involved say they want someone who thinks outside the box to help solve their problems." "We don't think outside the box," Webb corrected cheerfully. "We think so far outside the box that the box becomes a theoretical concept that may or may not exist, depending on who's observing it." Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication system from the absolutely not. "Admiral Chen, you might want to see this. We're receiving some interesting transmissions from the outer galaxy. Chen activated the main display. Morrison appeared on screen, still on the bridge of his impossible ship. Behind him, Murphy's holographic avatar was visible, apparently reorganizing the laws of thermodynamics while humming a tune that sounded like mathematics. What kind of transmissions, Captain? Well, it turns out the Galactic Council wasn't the only group planning to invade human space. We've had messages from the Stellar Empire, the Void Collective, and something called the Rigid Dominion. They were all preparing invasion fleets. Chen felt her stomach drop. Were? Morrison's grin was visible even through the holographic display. Key word being were. They've all sent very polite messages explaining that they've reconsidered their plans and would prefer to discuss trade agreements instead. Apparently, our little demonstration convinced them that humans might not be the easy targets they thought we were. How many invasion fleets were heading our way? Rodriguez asked. Murphy's avatar materialized on the display. Based on intercepted communications, approximately 15 different military forces were planning coordinated attacks on human territory. They have all now requested permission to withdraw from our space with minimal embarrassment. 15? Chen sat down heavily. We were facing 15 different invasions? Were, Webb emphasized. Past tense. Now we're apparently the galaxy's most desired allies. There's something amusing about defeating your enemies by confusing them so thoroughly that they decide to become your friends instead. The main communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. Chen accepted it, and the image of an alien she'd never seen before appeared on screen. This one looked like a cross between a butterfly and a geometrical equation, with wings that displayed complex mathematical formulas. Greetings, Admiral Chen of the humans, the alien said in a voice like wind chimes made of pure logic. I am Prime Calculator Zephyr of the Probability States. We have observed your recent victory over the Galactic Council with great interest. Hello, Prime Calculator. What can we do for you? We would like to formally request alliance with humanity. Our species specializes in calculating the probability of unlikely events. Until now, we have never encountered a species whose existence has a probability rating of hilariously impossible. We find this fascinating and would like to study your methods. Chen looked at Webb, who was practically bouncing in his chair, with excitement. What exactly does an alliance with the probability states involve? We offer our services in predicting the outcomes of your wonderfully absurd military strategies. In return, we ask only that you occasionally do something that makes our computers crash from trying to calculate how impossible it should be. That sounds like a fair trade, Morrison called out from his ship. Murphy loves making computers cry. Indeed I do, Captain, Murphy agreed. It's one of my favorite hobbies. After the probability states representative signed off, Chen turned to her assembled staff. Gentlemen, I think we need to reassess our position in the galaxy. How so? Rodriguez asked. 3 days ago, we were a primitive species facing extinction. Today, we're apparently the galaxy's newest power, not through conquest or intimidation, but because we built something so ridiculous that it broke everyone's understanding of how warfare is supposed to work. Webb nodded enthusiastically. It's the perfect human solution. When faced with an impossible problem, we didn't try to solve it sensibly. We made it more impossible until it worked in our favor. The question is, Chen continued, what do we do now? We can't exactly go back to being a minor species hiding in our home system. The galaxy knows about us now. Morrison's voice came through the speakers again. Actually, Admiral, I might have some thoughts on that. Murphy and I have been talking, and we think we might have a solution. I'm almost afraid to ask. What if we became the galaxy's troubleshooters? Think about it. We're the species that solves impossible problems by making them more impossible. Half the galaxy is dealing with conflicts that make no sense using traditional logic. We could help them find solutions that work precisely because they shouldn't. Chen considered this. It was a crazy idea. But then again, crazy ideas seemed to be humanity's specialty. Murphy, she said, what's your assessment of this proposal? Statistically speaking, Admiral, it has a 347% chance of working perfectly and an 8% chance of accidentally creating a new form of mathematics. I consider both outcomes acceptable. How can something have a 347% chance of working? The same way we can exist in 17 dimensions while being powered by stubbornness, Webb explained. Once you accept that reality is more of a guideline than a rule, percentages become much more flexible. Over the next few hours, more messages arrived from across the galaxy. The Thermal Kings wanted help mediating a dispute with their own emotions. The Void Touched needed assistance with a problem that technically didn't exist, but was causing significant existential distress anyway. A species called the Confused Wanderers had gotten lost in their own star system and couldn't find their way home, despite living there for thousands of years. Each problem was different, but they all had one thing in common. They were the kind of impossible situations that normal logic couldn't solve. They needed the human approach. Creative stubbornness applied with ridiculous enthusiasm. Well, Chen said finally, it looks like we have our answer. Humanity's new role in the galaxy is to be the species that fixes things by breaking them in exactly the right way. I love it, Morrison said from his impossible ship. Murphy, plot a course for the Confused Wanderers system. Let's go help some people find their own planet. Course plotted, Captain. Engaging the Defiance drive. Reality is prepared for another round of creative interpretation. The Absolutely Not began to move, sliding through dimensions like a fish, through water, carrying humanity's first official diplomatic mission to solve problems that couldn't be solved by anyone who cared about making sense. Chen watched the ship disappear into hyperspace, taking its cargo of weaponized impossibility to help strangers in distant stars. Around her, the staff began planning for humanity's new future as the galaxy's premier experts in magnificent absurdity. Colonel Rodriguez, she said, start putting together a list of our most creative problem solvers. I have a feeling we're going to need them. Already on it, Admiral. Should I include the team that built a faster-than-light communications array out of rubber bands and spite? Especially them. And Rodriguez? Yes, Admiral. Add a note to our official records. From now on, when someone tells humanity that something is impossible, our official response is, challenge accepted. Outside the station windows, space looked exactly the same as it always had. But somehow, everything had changed. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors or subjects, but as the species that looked at impossible problems and said, hold my coffee and watch this. The universe would never be the same. And that was exactly how humanity liked it.